Okay, so thank you, Chairman. We're now recording.
Okay, well, welcome everybody to this Overview and Scrutiny Commission meeting this evening. If I may, first of all, just brief housekeeping, and I do keep it brief. You all need to mute yourselves at the start of the meeting. Switch on your camera when you are next to speak, please, and say your name before you begin. Not for us, but if there's any members of the public watching, I'd like to know who's talking. Okay, that's fine. If we go into item 1, then apologies for absence. I certainly know of Councillor Mossam, Councillor Tina Mackenzie-Boyle, and Councillor John Porter. Are there any others?
So thank you, Chairman. I'm also aware that Executive Director Kevin Gibbs is unable to join us this evening as well.
Okay, thank you. I don't think there are any others that I can see with the attendees. So we move on to item 2, the minutes of the previous meeting, which I have to say I found thoroughly interesting and learnt a lot. I'll go through page by page, and it sort of stopped me if you have a question. On the papers I have, it's page 3, start of item 2, and then we go on to item 4. Interesting there on one of the minutes that scoping had begun on the next review, which would focus on county lines and child exploitation. I'm sure Jill will have something to say about that later. So that's page 4, page 5, page 6. On page 6, at the very bottom, it's talking about some of the questions, and the very last question says a query was raised on whether Bracknell Forest Council scrutiny officers would be able to have a copy of the report. This is of Health Watch when Tess Scott was talking to us. And she said it would likely be published during week 3 in June 2020. Have we had that report? Do you know?
Chair, no, we haven't had that report. I followed that up with Health Watch Bracknell Forest for this week to be able to update you, and I'm afraid it's a new by the end of this week. I'm hoping that it'll be available, but as soon as it is, I will share a link to that publication to you all directly.
Thank you. And then over to page 7. I think there's one item I picked up there. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 items down. Again in questions, but it says the executive member for Adult Services, Health and Housing suggested that the Commission schedule a briefing with Health Watch to find out more information on their role. I think that was a good idea, and we ought to follow it up. I don't know whether anybody disagrees with that, but at some time in the future, we may be able to get together again with Health Watch. Yeah.
And I'm just going to confirm, Chair, that part of my following up, I made contact with who our local Bracknell Forest officer is. So I've now got their contact details, and it's hopefully with them that we'd be able to organise that briefing directly.
Okay, fine. Page 8, I should say, and page 9. That's the end of the minutes, and as there's no questions, I take it we are all satisfied of the content. Yes. If anybody isn't, please indicate.
Chairman, only to comment, Michael Brossard, I found the minutes excellent. The level of detail provided, considering this was just over a 1-hour meeting, to encapsulate all that was said, I think is a credit to the officers who provided the agenda, the minutes. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, I think you're right, Mike. Thank you. Okay, then we take those as being accurate and accepted.
Can I just say, Mary, tempting my hands up, I would just like to say that It was a superb meeting, and the minutes reflect that, because I think we actually asked a lot of really good questions, but we got some good answers. And if they didn't know, they were honest enough to say they didn't know, but they will get back to us or whatever. And I think I thought it was a really good meeting, and we should have more of them like that, really.
Well, we're certainly trying to make it that sort of that level of interest, because I like you. I enjoyed it. I learnt a lot, frankly. I think if I learnt anything, the single item that jumped out to me was, we're not going to see, I think, the surgery process, primary care, that we all think we're used to. There's certainly changes afoot there. So I think we've all got to get our head around that. If it's any interest, I found a doctor last week and I was 45th in the queue. So there you go. Moving on to item 3, declarations of interest and party whip. I'm not aware of any. Does anybody else bring in? Nope, nothing in the list. Thank you. Urgent items of business. Again, I'm not aware of any.
I can confirm I'm not aware of any, Chair.
Thank you. Public participation. Not aware of any.
Again, not aware of any either, Chair.
Thank you. And then we go over to item 6, which is the Environment and Communities Overview and Scrutiny Panel report on integrated enforcement. Now, again, with page numbers, it says here it's on page 11 to 28. Ordinarily, Councillor Porter would be reporting on this as the chairman. Sadly, John, as I mentioned, is otherwise detained urgently, and he phoned me this afternoon, so he's unable to get here. Also, the vice chairman of that panel, I'm afraid, is away. He's unable. He's actually in hospital. So it falls, I guess, to other members who were on that panel. I certainly was on it, but I missed a few meetings. To perhaps, if there are questions, to help out in getting some answers. But first of all, can I just thank Joey, who's done this report and put it together and made it, I say, when you look at it, very interesting with some of the little graphics and things that he's put in there. It's a little bit more than the boring old report that we used to. So Joey, my thanks to you for that. And we'll go to, if you are following it, it starts really on page 15. And if there are any questions, we will try and answer them. And if we haven't, with other members on that panel, then we'll come back and answer them then. So are there any questions? It's a very full report. Very interesting, I have to say, sitting on it. Councillor Brossard.
Thank you, Chairman. Let me just turn my camera on. Only to say that they were looking at it on page, I think, 23 on our page. There were, I think, 10 councillors who participated. I have to say that the report and the presentation, can I reiterate what you said? I think Joey has produced an excellent consolidated report that actually encapsulated all the observations and points that were made. So it's a very good report, and I do commend it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Temperton, Mary?
Thank you. Yeah, I was a bit worried at first when it said appropriate officers, but then it explained that later on who the appropriate officers were. But I do think they could have given more examples, because I only came, as you can see, I'm included, to popping in whenever I could. And I do know, I mean, antisocial behaviour I take, but there was loads. It said there was huge examples right across where enforcement would be needed by appropriate officers. And I do think it lacks examples of when each appropriate officer would be looking at their area to have enforcement.
Okay, Mary, thank you. Are there any other points members would like to raise?
Councillor Birch, yes.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. It's a really good report, and I like the way they've done the recommendations and they've kept them short and to the point. The only thing that I sometimes find with enforcement is the timescale of some of these things, and I couldn't see that in this, but that was something that sometimes it takes a lot of time. I mean, it's acknowledged it takes more than, there's a crossover with different authorities working together. But I was quite interested in some of the timescales, because I know with some of the enforcement things, it does take a lot of time to get it worked through and to get a proper outcome that we all want. So that was just one thing I would have liked them to address, and it's a shame that I can't ask the chairman whether they did look at that.
Okay, thank you, Jill. Councillor Virgo?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Jill, actually. Sorry, I should put my camera on, shouldn't I? I agree with Jill, actually. Sometimes the lapse of time can be very frustrating, I think, to those people who are trying to get some action. That would be my first comment. And, so we'd like to know why that often is. I know there's a lot of bureaucracy, but, can we cut through all that? The second point is, I just wonder if we have enough parking attendants actually in enforcement, frankly. This is becoming more of a slight problem with cars and parking, and whether we have enough. So those are the two things. I think, I do understand that we've got a tougher regime on rubbish that's been, left in countrysides and things. But sorry, I've only read this briefly. And I wondered if we got any, how many court cases we've actually had and won. If that was said, I missed it.
Thank you, Tony.
Can I come in on that one? It's Dorothy here, Bob. You might want to talk with John Harrison and have him, because the PPP comes under him. Yep. The enforcement comes under him, particularly with recruiting of traffic wardens. Again, that's something we could be putting out ourselves.
I think, yeah, I mean, that we can delay the recommendations in this report.
I would think so.
We could go back to John.
Yes.
To review and take up the items that you've raised, and there is time for it to come to our next meeting. Now, it looks like this meeting may be short, but I think the next one will be quite long. But nonetheless, for that, there is time to include some of those answers to your questions. I think
I think that's a good idea, Mr. Chairman, because I think, it's a full report, but there are some things of enforcement which we would like more information on, because we're going to go through quite a lot of, how can I say, turbulent water from now on in, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, if Kirsty, did you want to say something?
So I was just going to highlight that I'm sure you're aware that on the next item, which is the work programme update, I believe that the chair was going to put forward the scope for a follow-up review, and you'll note that whilst it doesn't specifically mention some of the points that you've made, I do believe that some of the issues that have been raised by councillors as questions were things that were found by the panel, and they felt that they needed to do a follow-up exercise to specifically drill down into some of those issues. So I appreciate you need an answer from the chair directly, but I just wanted you to be aware that it is something that I believe the panel are already thinking about.
Okay, fine. Thank you. In which case, as I say, I will defer this report to the next meeting. Yeah. And in that time, maybe John will consider some of the content and certainly made aware of your questions and concerns, and see if they can be more inclusive in the report that will give you the answers.
You could also request like John Harrison to come around and attend the meeting because of his association with the PPP, and he would have the direct answers for that, Kirsty.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, though, I think that's for when the report is taken to the commission. Sorry, excuse me, to the executive. We'll obviously be coordinating with John on John Harrison at that point. I think it just want to give the chair an opportunity to respond at this stage, but I will follow up with Councillor Porter and discuss the questions with him afterwards and see the best approach. Thank you.
Okay. As I say, I'm also conscious of the agenda on the next meeting, having time to do that, but later on there may not be that time, so it's just fortunate at the moment that we can, I think, quite rightly delay this until the next meeting. Tony, did you want to say something? Your hand's up.
Sorry, Bob, I didn't take it down actually.
Okay, right, then we will move on to item 7, which is the work programme update. At our panel chairs give us an update on how things are going and where they're going with it. Mike, can I ask you to give us an update first, please?
Apologies, I'm just sharing the slides now. Bear with me one moment.
Can you hear me? Where's everybody gone, Kirsty?
Apologies, sorry, I've inadvertently closed the wrong presentation, so bear with me one moment and I'll quickly get it up. Sorry, these things happen.
Chairman, I could give you a verbal. Chairman, I could give you a verbal one if you like.
Yes, please, Jill, because obviously
I hope it's a polite verbal.
Or Mike could give a verbal one. What do you want? Do you want me to give a verbal one?
Yeah, Jill, you come in.
Yeah. Okay, so the Special Education Needs and Disabilities, the SEND review, it was due to be complete by now, but we've taken a little bit longer because we've done extensive investigative work, and our next bit is to hold our public meeting of the panel on the 18th of July at 6 to discuss the draft recommendations with representatives from the local authority and health, and then that final report will be available for discussion and ratification at the September Overview and Scrutiny Commission meeting. We've already had one meeting last week with the directors to go through our initial recommendations and drafting some with them and having input. So we're really quite ahead, and I've got to say, we have been to a lot of different schools, a lot of different SRPs and special needs settings. We've done a lot of investigations, and actually it's been a very thorough report, and I hope you enjoy actually hearing all the things that we've done.
Thank you.
Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about is the we've already scoped the next item, the child criminal exploitation is what we're calling it, instead of county lines, because we've widened it out, because during the pandemic, as you could understand, county lines morphed into something different because of course people were not actually travelling. So the county lines, the way they got their drugs out had to be modified. So it actually became different areas. They actually started to exploit young people more. So we've changed it slightly. So it is still county lines, but actually it encompasses child criminal exploitation. So we've actually done that ready to start, and we're just starting to put some dates in the diary. The other thing I've organised is let me get the right date. It's September. I'm having a panel meeting on the 28th of September in the evening so that everybody can make it at 7 p.m. And we're going to look at what we've done in the last 3 years and look forward and start thinking about, even though, you know, I know you probably think it's a bit advanced, but if we were to pick up more issues, what we would be thinking about doing. And looking back at what we've already done and really discussing things that went well, things that we might recommend to another panel that they might change. So that's what we've been doing.
Well, thank you, Jill. I mean, I have to say that the amount of effort and work that the panels are putting into these reports, to me, it's been exceptional. Every panel chairman has worked hard.
Very much.
Every panel member is working hard and contributing, and it does afford those people the chance to really get in there and ask the questions and find some answers that they probably wouldn't have the opportunity of finding in other places. So to everybody on panels, I'd just like to thank them anyway, you know, because it's work worth doing.
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask Jill a question?
Yes, certainly.
Yeah.
Going back to the SEND report, Jill, one of the things that I was surprised at is that we didn't get any inference of the problem on our sort of usual, you know, data that we get on the quarterlies, you know, from parents and so on. Whereas, in fact, you know, we were talking privately, I know, but there was a lot of obviously letters and general kind of worry about things. Are you looking at that from a council point of view and wondering why that didn't happen?
We have found out why it didn't happen.
Okay.
And yeah, we have found out why it didn't happen, and we have found why things went wrong, to be honest with you. But I don't think it's really. I think with these reviews, you can't sort of point fingers and blame people. But one of the recommendations definitely is the department has to be completely reorganised, and that is one reason. The other reason is data, and that is coming out loud and clear. The data was not collected in the correct way for management to have really good eyes on what was going on, and this has come up very, very clearly. And so that is one of the recommendations. And the department of, you know, the director is quite happy for us to put this in, and acknowledges it. It has been acknowledged, which I feel is a real step forward.
I wasn't thinking of putting a finger and blame and all those things. I think it's past that, unless there's something that is more serious. But you know, sometimes we need sort of red kind of danger signs on something, don't we? If there was a way of doing that, and then it would alert the Overview and Scrutiny Commission to kind of deep dive quickly.
We've been assured, and I've had regular, I mean, my Vice Chairman Michael knows that I've been on and on about data. And, you know, as tonight explained, and Kevin has assured me we're going to get it much better. But also, we have asked for this data to be included about the things that we need to do with SEND. It has to be included, and it wasn't included in the same way. And it is really key. So the question you ask is really pertinent because it is really important. And how can we tell how things are going if you don't have correct data? And
actually, we don't need to know the detail. We just need to know the sort of overall problem of it. Yeah. Okay.
So it was a good question. Thank you. I think Michael might have something to add as well.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Jill. I think without any disrespect to Jill, let me say that in terms of data extraction and detail. Jill is obsessive about that. And I think it's very fortunate that we found out, I think, in a meeting this week, that Tom is actually going to be one of the people who will actually collate the data. And based on my experience of him and our experience of him, he actually is passionate about collating all the information from all the different sources and bringing it together in a format that may not be the ideal, really, to be not so comprehensive that it's far too detailed, but actually for us to be able to summarize the elements on which we can extract the information and see that hopefully, Chairman, we're going in the right direction. Thank you for that, Jill.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Any other questions to Jill? No, thank you, Jill, very much.
Right, thank you.
We can turn to Mike. Are you ready and receiving us now?
Hello, Mike Gibson here. I'm sorry I have to use my phone. I can't get my computer to work properly, so if it's a little bit scrambled, here I am. Actually, following on from what Jill said, we are going to have a meeting shortly on Teams on the 19th of July, and I want to have a look at the effect that our review on blue badges is one of the things that we're going to discuss, just to see what effect we've actually made on those issues and how the recommendations have been carried out. And we'll be looking at also what the next other project for the panel will be. There's a lot happening in adult social services at the moment, but it might not be the most appropriate time to have it. So I will be having one on inward focus, but that depends on what the panel and what we discuss on the 19th.
Okay, Mike, if I may, do you have any idea which meeting you might bring a scoping to us to get the next one underway?
After the 19th, we'll be able to bring something forward, because I do want to do a short review on the effect. So that will be my recommendation, that we can bring a scoping to the next Ovian scrutiny. If we can't do it to August, certainly early September.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions to Mike from members? No? Okay, then thank you very much.
Very much, Chair.
Thank you. And the next item under the work programme update on your papers, if you can find it there, it's on page 29, but it's the Commission to consider the scope for the enforcement strategy review from the Environment and Communities Overview and Scrutiny Panel. And that is the scope on page 29. So if members are happy with that scoping, then we can put that in place. If anybody is unhappy about the scoping, could they indicate and talk to us? No? Okay, then we take that scoping as being accepted for their next panel situation. Right. Well, there's nothing else on the agenda other than to mention that the next meeting is on the 4th of August. I don't know whether many people will be away or what the situation will be there with attendance, but it is the 4th of August, and I'll look forward. Well, I'll see you before then, I'm sure. Probably the council meeting.
My apologies, Chair. I can't make the 4th of August.
Right.
Chair, I can't make the 4th of August either, I'm afraid.
Okay, well, look, if I can say, if there's anybody else that can't make it, if they can let us know, and if we find that there are a number of members that can't make it, then we'll have to look for another date, I think. But if one or two can't make it, I understand. It's a pity it's panel chairman, but you can certainly, I'm sure, brief your vice chairman to make a report.
Chairman, I was going to have to offer my apologies as well for the 4th of August.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Okay.
Chair, can I suggest we look for another date?
Well, it's only 3 at the moment.
Okay.
Let me just think about it. Let's just see. There may be others. There may not.
Isabel, can you make it?
No, I was just going to. Sorry, I've been having trouble. I was going to speak to Mike.
I think it's too early at this stage with its holiday period or people going away and things happen at short notice. So I think having it, specifically at the beginning of August is actually going to be a very difficult one. As far as I know, at the moment, I'm free, but I can't guarantee it.
Okay, well, what we might do is circulate and just send an email round and ask people to respond to that and just see what the numbers are. Okay, and see where we go from there. Kirsty, did you want to?
Yeah, only to say that as we've deferred the integrated enforcement report, it just will need to be very careful about where we defer if we did move the meeting date to make sure that it's not impacting. I appreciate circumstances have been against us with Councillor Porter not being able to come this evening, but I just don't want to jeopardise that moving through the system. Thank you.
Well, everybody have a good evening.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Look out for my bumblebee.